Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. This is part 2 of the video. Finished this a little bit ago and now I'm doing part 2. This one's only going to be 10 minutes. The first one ran longer just because at the 15-minute mark they were talking about the fighting. If you've seen the first episode of the first part, and you'll know what I mean. I didn't want to interrupt it in the middle of the war aspect. I hate kind of interrupting it like that. Ow on my leg. Doesn't matter. Video. All hands ahoy. Life at sea's got to be a breeze, right?
Combat at sea was relatively rare. Great fleet actions, such as Trafalgar and the Nile, were rarer still. Just a handful of days, spread across 20 years of war. Weeks and months often lay between any encounter.
I'll say it may have been rare, but when it happened, you may have been at sea 3 years, and maybe you spent 1 day at battle. That 1 day was longer than those 3 years. It's like any police officer will tell you that it's relatively calm until you pull someone over or until you have your hand on that weapon, where the adrenaline kicks and it's just the longest moment of your life. So I can just imagine it may be easy to an extent until you get into that moment
with the enemy. Then life at sea was dominated by naval routine, and the passage of time marked by the ship's bell. The naval day began at noon, determined by the officers' observation of the sun with their sextants. The moment the sun reached its highest point was noon. The ship's hourglass was turned, and the bell rung 8 times to mark the beginning of the afternoon watch. Half an hour later, as determined by a half-hour sandglass, the bell was rung once. A half hour later, it was rung twice, and so on. So 5 bells in the afternoon watch was 2:30 p.m. 8 bells meant the start of a new watch, sending half the crew below deck to rest or do other tasks, and bringing the other half on duty. There were 7 watches in all, though the first and second dog watches were only 2 hours long. This meant the 2 halves of the crew switched their routine each day, and one half wasn't always stuck with the same night watches. Senior officers slept in a hanging cot. For everyone else, bed was a hammock strung up from the ship's beams. Most of the men slept on the middle or lower gun decks, their hammocks suspended between the guns, just 16 inches apart. But as most ships operated a 2-watch system, half the crew on duty while the other half slept, about half the hammocks were empty at any given time. In normal conditions, only part of the watch was required to sail the ship. The rest carried out various tasks, not least cleaning the ship, scrubbing decks, polishing brass and painting woodwork. This was a matter of maintenance and hygiene, as well as collective pride in their ship's appearance. The crew were fed 3 times daily, though only dinner at noon was a hot meal. They organized themselves into messes of about 8 men, each taking his turn to fetch cooked food from the galley, which was eaten at a table suspended between the guns. Naval food wasn't fancy, but it was sufficient, even for men engaged in long hours of hard labor. Apart from the ship's substantial stores of salted beef...
Sorry. I was kind of reading that and then I unpaused, or I let
the guns. Naval food wasn't fancy, but it was sufficient, even for men engaged in long hours of hard labor.
This is their weekly allowance. So they had about a pound every day of the biscuit. I was trying to break that down, but beef. So your big meat, I mean, you have a little bit of meat, a little bit of pork, a little bit of peas, a little bit of oatmeal, a little less than an ounce of butter, cheese, 1+ ounce of cheese. I mean, your big thing is basically a biscuit. Wonder if you got beef and pork. I don't know. Interesting.
Apart from the ship's substantial stores of salted beef, pork and ship's biscuit, the ship took on fresh meat, including livestock, fresh vegetables and water, at every possible opportunity. Most of the crew probably ate better at sea than they would have in civilian life.
Wow.
As well as the daily routine dictated by the ship's bell, there were weekly rituals. Clothes and hammocks washed and hung out to dry once a week, weather permitting. Gunnery practice by divisions. And on Sundays, a church service led by the ship's chaplain, if there was one, or the captain. This was followed at least once a month by a public reading of the Articles of War, the regulations that governed conduct and discipline at sea. The articles listed 36 offences, from drunkenness to theft, mutiny, cowardice and striking an officer.
Swearing?
Half of these were punishable by death. In several cases, it was the only sentence allowed. British discipline at sea was notoriously severe. Crimes for which a sailor was not hanged would usually lead to a flogging with the cat-o'-nine-tails. Drunkenness was the most common offence, not unconnected to the Navy's daily allowance of a gallon of beer per man in home waters, or...
Sorry. Yeah, it looks like he's trying to light his nose on fire. So, yeah.
half a pint of rum or other spirits overseas.
Go back a little bit so I catch what he said. I was
The Navy's daily allowance of a gallon of beer per man in home waters, or half a pint of rum or other spirits overseas. This, mixed 4 parts water to 1 part spirits, with lemon or lime juice added to prevent scurvy, was the famous Navy grog.
I've heard grog before.
Any man caught drunk or asleep on duty might get 12 lashes, delivered by a boatswain's mate in front of the assembled crew. Serious crimes, such as desertion, might result in 200 lashes or more, a punishment so severe it sometimes killed the prisoner. Some naval captains were ferocious tyrants, but most knew that harsh punishment was best used sparingly.
Yeah.
British sailors did not expect an easy life, but did expect to be treated fairly and with dignity. If not, there could be trouble. In 1797, the Royal Navy experienced a large-scale mutiny at Spithead, affecting 16 ships of the line. It was effectively a strike for better pay, as sailors hadn't had a pay rise in more than a century. The mutiny was settled without violence, and the sailors largely got what they wanted. A second mutiny...
I'll say that they probably went about it the right way. You know, it wasn't violent. I don't really know how you'd mutiny the right way, actually. But, you know, they went about it probably with a respectful way of saying, look, we deserve a little bit more. Instead of, if you don't give us what we want, give in to every bit of our demands, you're going to die. Well, you're never going to get what you want that way.
At the Nore made more radical demands, with some crews threatening to defect to France. This time, the authorities were determined to set an example, and hanged 29 ringleaders. Despite hard discipline and service, the British Navy produced crews that were experienced and able, bound together by long service at sea. Men that...
Hold on, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for pausing it so much, but there was something here that I...
British Navy produced crews that were
This guy looks like he's... It looks like he's sticking his dick in the cannon. And this guy's going, come on, man. I don't want to look at that.
experienced and able, bound together by long service at sea. Men that bold commanders knew they could rely on. The British Navy, well-manned, well-resourced, and backed by a powerful economy, was able to secure complete naval dominance during the Napoleonic Wars. It would prove a crucial factor in Napoleon's defeat. HMS Victory, having played her part, was placed in the Naval Reserve at the end of the war. Narrowly escaping the Breakers' Yard, she became the flagship of the Port Admiral of Portsmouth on England's south coast, and later flagship of the Royal Navy's Commander-in-Chief. After a major refit, Victory began a new life as a museum ship, opening to the public in 1928.
That's cool.
Today, she is undergoing another major conservation project to deal with the many challenges faced by a 250-year-old wooden sailing ship. It will ensure her survival far into the future, as a unique memorial to this dramatic age of naval warfare. Thank you to Royal...
It's very cool. I'm sorry this video was a little bit shorter, but the last video was a little bit longer, and I just didn't want to pause it in the middle of the fighting at sea, kind of what they expected. And it started before the 15-minute mark. Maybe I should have went back, but I didn't, and we're here now. It's the end of the video. My microphone seems a little bit far away. Can you hear me better? I just have it out of my way because I don't want to hit it. Well, I'm going to end this video here. It's a good one. I think I've done mostly all the Epic History TV videos, which is sad because I really like the channel, but now I'm on Kings and Generals, but that's beside the point. So I'm going to go ahead and end this video here. Like and subscribe, or next time you're taking your Puma for a casual walk through the grass of Iceland, a rhino's going to stab you in the backside. I don't know what any of that means. Have a good day, have a good night.